I would say namaste, everyone. So without having to say all the other time zones, and glad to be here with all of you for the 2024 HyperMesh release concerning post-processing. And this is the agenda for today's presentation. We're going to touch base on what's coming up when it comes to post-processing directly in HyperMesh, which I will be responsible of in this presentation. Then I will hand over to Varun, that will take care of giving you guys the heads up and the highlights on the HyperView release. And then last but not the least, Sandesh, which will guide us through the announcement on HyperGraph and MediaView and on the report functionality. I will start with HyperMesh Post, and I guess this is obviously nothing can happen without, first of all, the feedback that we get from all the field. You guys are the interface with the customers, so we are greedy to learn more and more what needs to be done, and above all, whether what we are doing is the right thing. When it comes to the 2024.0 updates from HyperMesh, I'm glad to share that a lot of content is now available for our customers. And obviously, you can read yourself, but let me go through this item. And we are glad to starting pushing more and more post-processing functionalities in HyperMesh to allow being HyperMesh a full functional post-processing post-processor for our customers, when obviously we have to deal with model results together and have also the possibility to retrofit the model data thanks to the results. This is the scope of HyperMesh Post, and doing hardcore simulation and optimization. So animation is coming in the game. Obviously, this has been heavily required by all our customers, first and foremost, the OptiStrack users and as well the aerospace people. And then still in the area of the aerospace domain, specifically for the space domain and relevant workflows, we have released in 2024 the root square sum derived load case in order to enhance further the usability and the workflows within HyperMesh when it comes to post-processing. We have been implementing the possibility to change the state of our plot controls through the legend directly, so with hyperlinks. We have finally released a missing feature since a lot of time, which is the possibility in TensorPlot to display the principal invariance, meaning the P1, P2, and P3 from a tensor state, being this either a stress tensor or a strain tensor, for example. We have introduced a new data type for an invariant, which is the extreme principal. I will spend some words, and then Arnaud is not in the game today, but he made a phenomenal job with the development team to expose the trace plot workflow and the free body groups in the landscape of the enhanced workflow within the free body, let's say, domain. So I will keep on going in slide mode, and I will want to finish with a live effect just to give you the feeling of what is happening. The first thing that I wanted to showcase is the possibility now in HyperMesh to display animation, and obviously this is in HyperView since day one. We have to do some extra work on the HyperMesh functionalities, graphics, and data model, but we're glad that we are now can expose the linear, the modal, and the transient mode in HyperMesh. The picture on the bottom right is something which is a snake preview, which is not, let's say, yet officially available. This is actually a development build where we're also exposing a transient animations with respect to a dyna model that could be also radius or a pump crash. This is a WIP in terms of exposing the explicit workflows within the HyperMesh infrastructures. But you can see on the bottom left, for example, an implicit nonlinear analysis, which obviously OptiStrack already offers as out of the box. As I was mentioning, we have been introducing the root squared sum. This is specifically requested in the space domain to do a kind of deterministic analysis between several accelerations. Usually is done with x, y, and z gravitational loads in the 3 directions. The formula is, if you wish, pretty trivial. So you take any row component from each load case, and you do the summations of the squares of each component, and then you extract the final root square. Obviously, but I wanted to mention again that in difference from the linear superposition, usually you do the linear superposition as a root component, and then you can extract the transformations of the final results, let's say the vectors and the tensors in any system, since the transformation matrix can be applied also on the resultant, being the linear superpositions, linear obviously per definition. The root squared sum is not linear, as you can obviously understand. So therefore, a results transformation in terms of system projection needs to happen upfront. And you will see in the workflows for creating the derived load cases using HyperMesh Post, you should be already familiar with this workflow. So you could create linear superposition as an envelope. Now you can create the root squared sum, and then the user is asked to select a global system. So you don't select elemental or material system for what matters. You will be able to select either a global system or a global user-defined, meaning that the transformations of all the quantities at row component level will be performed upfront, and then the mathematical functions that you see on the screen will be finally applied, and then all the relevant quantities will be calculated on demand by the time you create a contour, a vector, or a tensor plot. Also in these slides, I am presenting, and I will show you live if time permits, the possibility, as I was mentioning, to control the plot state via legend hyperlink. Basically, there is no new functionality in terms of capabilities of calculation, but is a new functionalities in terms of user experience and usability. Now, we have been introducing in the past the legend to be, for example, an entity, and allowing further automations on the legend settings, storing in the HyperMesh database the position, controlling through API the number of levels, the position, as I was mentioning, the colors, and the ranges. Now, this new development, for which again I want to thank Varun, because he led this development personally from a PM standpoint, and also the HyperMesh and also the framework team to make this happen. We have the hyperlinks as an entry point to select the several, let's say, hierarchical level of each plot state. So from the data type, I can select stress, the data component from Mises to P1, and then, for example, the layers and all the other, let's say, controls, which usually are available through the entity editor. So this is not, again, any infrastructural change on the database. It's a workflow enhancement that allows the users to use fully the space and then concentrate on the graphics area on the post-processing workflows. From an enhancement standpoint, we also introduced the possibility, as I was mentioning, in the tensor plot to change the modality from the component visualization from a tensor, let's say from a XX to XZ and so on and so forth, also to display the principal invariants P1, P2, and P3. On the same side, still, if you wish, within the invariant calculation, we have introduced or added a new derived type, and we call it the extreme principal. And I wanted to make sure we are all on board on this definition. As you know, we have been having in the past, and we still have in HyperView, and this is going to change very soon, the concept of the max-up principle, which actually has always been the extreme principle. Let me explain. If you have invariance on the 3 principal directions, as you can see from the list that I'm showing you in the slides, you can have different magnitudes, but also different signs. The extreme principle as a mathematical pure definition now will be taken as the value with sign, which is the one which has in magnitude the highest value. The maximum ups principal is going to be the value which is the maximum returned with absolute value. So meaning that in this case, the max ups principal is nothing but the extreme principal in absolute value. Since customers are willing to have the possibility to look either at the value per se or to the extreme values, also with the signs, depending on the type of workflow which is requested, we decided consciously to make sure that we can expose both. It's a small enhancement, so I don't want to ring any specific winning bell to this extent, but I want to make sure we are all, let's say, in line with this definition. And then last but not the least, we have been introduced, and I was mentioning when it comes to the work that Arnaud Stoffer did, is the integrations of a new entity type, which is called the free body section. And it's relevant, let's say, usage to display the former workflow that we had through a dialogue, which is the trace plot. I just want to make sure we are on the same page where I want to show a couple of these workflows directly live. So we have a small model, so I'm going to import the results here. And now, as you can see, when the results get imported, then we will see the animation toolbar coming up in HyperMesh. Now I can display a plot control for any type of contour, and then I need to have a deformation plot, at least right now in 2024.0, and then the animation can start, right? So nothing really that is groundbreaking from the functionalities that we did already have from the HyperMesh overall framework. This is available in HyperView since a lot of time, but we have introduced also this possibility. And on top of that, we are also changing the way the animation toolbar is presenting, getting rid of the panels with all the new user interface, because obviously our aim is not just to expose the functionalities, but is to expose the functionalities that make sense, but also make our customer life easier, and so on and so forth. And as I was mentioning here, the Legend hyperlink is available also with the possibility with IntelliSense, right, to change the data type directly also by typing what is available, right? So this is in my point of view, a fantastic add-in. And again, as I was mentioning, we have the RSS load case here, which is available. I can select the load cases, and then when the load case has been selected, the user will be available to select a system, which is in this case must be either global or, let's say, global in a user-defined standpoint. So all the transformations of all the data, either whether the data are nodal bound or elemental bound, they have to be projected on a same sole univoc system in HyperMesh, because this is obviously requires a common transformation, a common base to perform all the nonlinear functionalities. Okay, I would like to hand over my speech to Varun.
So let me start off by saying that for HyperView in 2024 cycle, majority of our focus and efforts have been towards making some core infrastructural changes. But having said that, I will show you some of the functionalities and features we have introduced or exposed in 2024 release. I will start off by highlighting a few of those in this presentation. And for more details, you can always refer to the release notes or touch base with me. So first thing I want to mention is we have introduced a sort of a quick toolbar option for setting the deformation scale factor. So you can do this directly from the view toolbar itself. It's just a small pop-up. It allows you to set the deformation scale factor. This is very useful for modal analysis, where users want to scale up the deformations, and they don't want to go to the panel to access this every time. They want to just keep the graphics area wide and expanded, and simply change the deformation scale factor on the screen. So this is possible from 2024. Next up is something Michele also showed earlier in his demo, is that there is now a compact pop-up for all animation controls, which means we are in the process of getting rid of the animation panel, and all the options that you see in the panel would be available through this pop-up itself. Again, the goal here is to enhance our user experience. We want users to keep the graphic area maximized or as large as possible, without having to open the panel area, and you could simply access all the animation settings right from this pop-up itself. And this will show options relevant to the animation mode that you are using. So if it's a transient, you would see certain options, relevant options like increment and range, etc. And in the case of modal simulation, you would be able to set the increment by angle. Next is some enhancement we have done to the display of top and bottom contour values in a note. So earlier, we used to show a fixed string which will display both the top and bottom values. So this was just a single string we used to display in the note, and it was not formattable. We couldn't set the precision because it was a string. And now we have allowed you to directly request for the top layer, both the layer information as well as the values, and the bottom layer information and the bottom layer values separately. And that means, for the values, these are numeric values, so you can control the format and the precision separately. And if you are plotting top bottom contour and you are requesting contour value, we are automatically going to be inserting these relevant expressions to allow you to change the format and precision. Another useful enhancement I want to mention here, and maybe even show it in a short demo, is that we have enhanced our entity selection, save and retrieve options to work across all the tools. If you have used the current HyperView, you may have noticed that the save and retrieve functions work only between certain tools today. But from 2024 release, you would be able to do it across any of the tools. Actually, I want to just highlight this point a little bit more with a short demo. This might be very useful to know for certain users, right? So here, what I have is I have loaded the model, and I have, I'm in the so-called idle mode, where I will be able to interrogate the model and get any information or do a live query, etc. Typically, users may do a selection in this idle mode itself, and they may want to transfer that selection, let's say, to the contour panel, for example, and then contour on those elements, just as a use case, right? So you could do this now with this enhancement. So you can basically come here and select the elements, either graphically, or for example, you can go and select, as an example, right? Go by component, right? And let's say I've selected this. You can say save the selection, right? And then you can come into the contour panel, and you would be able to retrieve it from here, right? As you see that we are using different GUIs for the panel and the idle mode selectors. And these were not communicating with each other earlier, but now that restriction has been removed. So you can go across. You can do the reverse also. You could select something from the panel, save it, and then you can go back into the idle mode, or you can go to the notes workflow, etc., and retrieve that selection, and then be able to apply something on that selection. So I wanted to mention that with the demo to get the point across. And then let me mention a few more enhancements. I think there will be a more detailed or separate webinars to cover each of these. So you may want to watch out for those. First thing I want to mention is on the Python automation side, we have been continuing to enhance it release after release. So in this release, we have added new classes for nodes and section cuts. So more automation is now possible using Python APIs. And then coming to the HWC, or the command recording language, we have added support to do a copy paste of pages and windows. So any action you do through the session browser, gets recorded in the HWC console, and you can also replay those, from the console. So I just want to mention that you can probably Stefan and Mikhail would be going in more detail into these updates as well as other automation updates in their webinar. So please watch out for that. Then also on the HP Trans side, I just wanted to mention that the licensing has been updated. So HP Trans will start pulling 21 Altair units from this release. This is a C-level decision, but something the field, the team should be aware of in case you get customer queries about that. Last couple of points, we have obviously added support for Abacus 2024 ODBs in this release, and keeping with our policy of only supporting, let's say, the last 5 versions, we are dropping support for 2019 ODBs. So 2024 is added and 2019 ODB support is dropped. And lastly, I want to mention that we have added a new preference option to set the default animation frame rate. This is the speed at which your animation plays on the screen. Usually we were playing it at maximum speed, and for certain users that was too fast, and they would tend to go to the panel or the pop-up to change that value. So they actually preferred a certain default to be set upfront, so they don't have to constantly tweak that value. So this is available from the preference dialog itself. So you could change it. And along with this, some of the preference options, we are now going to be saving it to the settings file, so they get remembered between sessions. So that's all I had to mention from my side. That concludes my presentation.
So let's get started discussing HyperGraph and MediaView enhancements. Then we will be moving over to automated reporting. In HyperGraph, or in general in plotting side of things, we have been focusing lately quite a lot on modularization. So you must have seen enhancements in HyperMesh plotting, as well as in other areas that use plotting services within HyperMesh as well. Now, having said that, in HyperGraph for 2024, we have migrated the defined curves panel. What does that really mean? So the panel that used to be, we have now taken that apart and created a dialog out of it. It has come up with plenty of benefits, and you'll see exactly right through them. Now we have a much bigger viewing list of curves. So if I'm defining a new curve, I have a reference of all the curves that were ever created within that particular window. While I'm defining that, I will make use of an enhanced expression builder as well. So we'll go through them one by one. Now, for first, we have an enhanced file selection panel. We'll go through it while we go through the demo as well. But like you can see, you can now select type request component exactly like how you usually do it by using build plots dialog. Then it also comes with a new expression builder, like I mentioned. It has a search functionality for functions list. It has a way to select curves directly. It has a way to evaluate values live while we are going through some formula building or expression building. Then it has an entity editor as well to fill up your parameters and finally put them directly into your vector definition, or try it in an expression before you decide to use it in a vector calculation. Then there is an option to also expose U, V, or even time and Q and W vectors. They have their own goals or purposes, and we understand they are not always required, but whoever needs it, it will always be available on the options panel whenever you are in the math mode. And then finally, if there are users who are directly trying to import values to build a curve inside HyperGraph, there is always a way to just look at a table, import the values. So there is a plus button here. You can directly import a CSV and get there. So let's actually jump into a demo right for this. So in HyperGraph, if I just load a new file, this is what we call build plot dialog. So when you select a file, you will get to see its internal content or table of content if you wish. Now here, when I request head acceleration, I get 4 components. When I plot them, I get certain window on the screen. Now we are aware that, okay, if I select one of these curves, there is a nice right-click context where I can directly apply filters, math, and everything else. In addition to that, we used to have this define curves panel that we have taken away. And now with this new dialog, it becomes even more even easier to go through this. So let's say I want to build a new curve that has first curve filtered, and I want to maintain it as a separate curve. That's why I'm not going to use stack math for some reason. So I would go into math in this case. Let's say I wanted to use the same time vector as my resultant angular acceleration. So I would go into curves, select the resultant angular acceleration, and simply insert the x vector of it in my formula or expression. Now for the y side, this is where we need to build an expression, right? So how do I search that? I can either go through this list, and we have included all math functions that ever existed with hypermath or hypergraph. You can obviously register more here with your OML scripts, and in future we will also see this enhanced for Python expressions as well. But for now, let's start with this. So we have the math. I can now either search through the list, and you will see the entity data popping up right here for you, or I can simply say SAE filter 95, for example. Now there is help available for all of these. Now, since I know this, that I need time vector to be X, so I'm going to select something. If I double click on it, it gets selected. I would go response vector, which is Y for the resultant angular acceleration. And then I know my filtering frequency, it's supposed to be 1000 for head acceleration. Padding is supposed to be forward and backward. And actually padding supposed to be both sided, and then direction is forward and then backward. So I would select the syntax. I can either try it in expression. So this is the great part of it. I mean, this is where you get to see the value of this enhancement, that you actually get to see whether your formula is correct before you even decide to apply it to the y side of this curve. Now, because I hit apply button, I also see a new curve popping up right behind on the graphic screen. Now, because we have this dialog up, I can also move it to another screen and continue working on what I had in my hypergraph window. And I can bring back this dialog, or I can operate on this dialog while it is on the other monitor as well. So that's the nice thing about all these enhancements. Now, having said that, you can also expect these kind of enhancements, because this is, again, we have been talking about modularization for a while. This is also another module that you can expect pretty soon to appear in a lot of other workflows wherever you see curve building happening. So you can expect to have this table building or math building functionality right there whenever you are building a curve. So let's move back to our presentation. Now on the media view side for 2024, we decided to reintroduce an old way of assigning the video time frames. So it used to be disabled. I mean, actually, we used to use this method until 2021.1 release. And in 21.2, we decided to upgrade it with an even accurate scheme of assigning time value to each frame of a video. Now, it's very hard to imagine, so we'll actually go through an example and see the effect of it. The important thing to remember is this will be disabled by default. We are not trying to impose the old thing on the new product as such. But if we had any users who had any sessions synchronized before 21.2 release, and if they see, their sessions are now not synchronized anymore, this is an option for them to get the synchronization without having to do anything. As such, the change is not big. You needed one-time change to resynchronize everything. I mean, not everything, but the video that was having a new time frame or new time value. But even that one-time change, if that can be skipped for somebody, that's an option here now. What happens really with this change is, okay, if I'm using the new scheme of assigning the time values, I would see the time frames or time values on the media view videos exactly same as the third-party media players. So if I'm seeing in a real world that there is a 17-second video, let's actually jump into an example. So I have collected a few videos here from IHS website. If I run this particular video on the screen using this Windows media player, you see that, okay, this is certain crash video. If I run it full, it goes somewhere until 17 seconds. And if I play it back again, it runs somewhere until 17 seconds. So if I go into media view window now and play the same video, See, we play it just like an engineering tool. We play it at the frame rate that user gets to control. But eventually, we show you the same time value that you get to see anywhere else. Uh, so that if user is interested in, a frame that was at 3 seconds, they can directly type it here and they'll get to the 3 seconds time frame. However, for some users, it may not be relevant. For example, although we like this video, it has 17 seconds and it very well matches here. You also see that this is actually a slow motion video. That means the time values that we are seeing may not be even valid for certain users. So that's where this extra option comes into picture. So if you go to preferences, use this embedded time frame option, and then you load this video. Now you see that actually the video time is showing as 512. Now the second actually doesn't have any meaning. It just gets assigned by default. So the same video, it's just that it has now different time values assigned to it. So probably this will help some users who have their animations or HyperView animations set up in certain way that they get full value for milliseconds uh, in millisecond scale instead of second scale. So it's eventually it's all about synchronization. So whether users like this way of scaling it or the other way of scaling it, it's eventually all about synchronization. So we are opening this option for the users to make their choices and uh, take whichever path they like out of here. So that's the news on MediaView. Now moving on to automated reporting. Just like hypergraph or in general plotting, even reporting side, we have been speaking about a lot of modularization activities. In fact, in the local tech exchanges, you'll see us talking about the model export or some of the Python-based reporting module enhancements. Now, talking about the feature that is released right now in this release, uh, we have introduced a new option for using image capture as per or doing the image captures using the aspect ratio from the PowerPoint placeholders. Now, for a longest time, we used to always rely on the image video resolution that you select. So when you say HyperWorks desktop, it used to be a vis-a-vis approach. What you see on the screen, in whatever form the image you see on the screen is exactly how it's going to appear in your presentation. However, we found few ideas. We got suggestions from some of the customers, and we decided to enhance this further. Now, what this option is going to do, it's also going to look at how your PowerPoint placeholder is. I mean, because I'm describing it in that way, that also means that this only applies to PowerPoint, not really to document reports or HTML reports as such. I mean, those are the reports where you anyway have the freedom completely to use anywhere, any which image video resolution, right? So in this case, when I use this aspect ratio, it applies in a way that, okay, in this case, if you see in this particular window or image, I have one window mode of HyperView where there is idle context table. So the way I see the model or this graphic window, it is quite stretched. So it's kind of 1:2 aspect ratio, right? So when I take these images and take it to my reporting, I see that although my placeholders were pretty big, they were almost in square shape. You see that the images were taken because we decided to honor the image video resolution that you had selected. So we honored it and we went with that approach. However, now users are looking for bigger images, right? So if you choose this option, you're going to get, or we are kind of going to override that mechanism and fit the images as per your placeholder. So it's going to give you enhanced experience in most cases, but in some cases it may not even make a difference if you had probably only single image on this slide, for example. In that case, this wouldn't have made any difference as such. So in some cases it's going to make a difference. In some cases it may not even make any difference. So, and for example, if you are used to using session reports or modules such as capture session, capture pages, windows, those are the places where we actually take over the slide and do things ourselves. In such cases, this option is not going to make any difference as such. So, I think this slide makes it very clear, but we can still jump into a quick demo. Well, I have one presentation here where, okay, I was following the image resolution. So if I look at these images, they are pretty small compared to the placeholders that we have, right? So if I go back to the product and let's Let's see that I have first applied the preference that I needed. So I apply this preference, hit OK, and now I start a new presentation. So when I hit the new preference option and then I hit the new report, that's really when such options get applied. So now it's reloading all the layout uh, layout from the PowerPoint template. Once it is done, you will see that when I click on new slide, I'm going to get all these options, but let's actually try the same thing, right? So let's use 2 images with caption. Once that is done, I'm going to title it as demo, and then I'm going to, keep the first one as it is. I'll use the second one to have probably the local transparency view. Then I'm going to hit run. So when that happens, we should have new images. We can quickly see the preview, how it looks already. So we can click here. You already see that this image actually has come out in the square form. So I'm sure that when I export this to the final PowerPoint, it's actually going to pan out the way I'm expecting. So when I hit export, okay, I can call for the new report. And when it is done capturing and exporting, you will see the new presentation popping up on the screen. So that's the overall idea of this new option. This option obviously gets carried once you create a template with this. It's going to get carried over to your file. So if you're running this in batch mode, do not be worried. We will carry this information for you. Now, having said that, that's about the enhancement that we wanted to talk about for the release.